Welcome everyone to a great webinar so far today. So what I'm going to talk about today is kind of probably a little bit narrower. It's something I'm calling transactional email 2.0, the idea of thinking beyond the purchase. So we all shop online. You're all familiar with this type of a transactional confirmation email like this one from Amazon. And so really with the thing that I want to try to get across today is not only optimizing these kinds of emails, but really sort of thinking, stepping outside of the box and thinking beyond this kind of email to what I'm calling sort of pre to post purchase emails. And so by, the traditional canned spam definition, these may not be true sort of transactional emails, but I want you to think about kind of all the different touch points pre and post purchase. So Charles is obviously going to talk about cart abandonment after my talk, and then there's the traditional types of emails there in the second bucket, if you will, the purchase confirmation, like that Amazon one, order confirmation, status shipping notice, etc. What I really want you to think about is sort of that next level beyond that, sort of the post purchase and the relationship, satisfaction surveys, review requests, recommendations, replenishment, repurchases, things like that. And then the relationship, so much beyond that, coming back into kind of a CRM approach and things like purchase anniversary and bounce back messages and loyalty programs and reminders and things like that. And the power of all this is it's really the right time, the right message. Charles will talk about, the concept of cart abandonment. There's no better intent than somebody loading up their shopping cart. And that's really kind of my message here as well, is that similarly, if somebody's made a purchase, what kind of intent does that show? It shows that they're an existing customer, they've paid money, and the opportunity to then leverage that for more purchases, referrals, things like that is truly powerful. And so, again, think beyond just kind of those confirmation kind of emails. So what I'm going to do now is just quickly walk through a couple of examples and then some best practices, and then we'll pass it on to kind of the Q&A and stuff. So this is an example of kind of two different emails using, sort of the recommendation concept. So this first one is basically, you can see there in the right, it's a post-review thank you. So, they've requested somebody to complete a review after they've made a purchase. They're showing the product that they reviewed, and then they're pulling in this case, recommendation products there you can see across the bottom based on actually segmentation. So this one's powered by a company called Baynote, which has a very cool kind of recommendation engine, et cetera, that looks at things that you've searched on the site and stuff like that and puts people into segments and stuff like that. So that's just sort of a quick example there of then coming back using additional touch points, thanking them for the review, and then as you can see there's a little bit of an incentive in the recommendations. One to the right, we all get these kinds of emails as well. The power of, in this case, it's not a recommendation based on past purchases or behavior or things like this. In this case, it's their e-commerce engine and business rules know that somebody that made this camera purchase is potentially likely to buy accessories for it, right? They've made this purchase of the Canon camera. Let's add in kind of these other things like a bag and lens and stuff like that. Very, very obvious. One of the key takeaways I want you to think about from these kind of examples is that you look at this thing, this is really complicated, et cetera, but the reality is if you're an e-commerce company, you probably are already using these kinds of technologies on your website. So you're using review technologies like Bazaar Voice and Power Reviews, or you're using recommendation engines like Baynote, Certona, MyBuys, et cetera, or your e-commerce engine. And so that's what I really want you to think about, is leveraging these other technologies that are powering increased conversion on your website, and using APIs and dynamic content, pull that same sort of content and technology into your emails. On kind of a different approach, I threw up this example from Fabric.com because I thought it was kind of different and unique. So basically, this is a long email that I've cut in half there. But what they do is they sell, as you can guess, fabric online and stuff. And what they've done here is somebody's made a purchase of those particular two styles of fabric, and then they're coming back to them at some point later, basically with the concept of scarcity, saying, hey, you made this purchase of fabric, and in essence, we know you bought it for a reason, and you may want more of that fabric before we sell out of it. And so it's creating scarcity. But the reality is it's adding value to the customer, right? Because think about if somebody's making dresses or something like that, they come back, they want to make more, and it's out of stock. So it's not only generating revenue, but actually is enhancing the relationship and adding value to that customer. And then sort of lastly, walk through a couple of examples. This is from a client, SNS Worldwide. This is actually how they think about kind of the post-purchase. Those first couple ones, typically those confirmation emails that I mentioned, but then they move into a survey, product review, and review notification. And I'm sure Tim would have some ideas on the design of these emails, but we'll leave that for another time. But the power of this, again, this is a product review email. Somebody's made a purchase. You come back at appropriate time later and ask for people to make that review. And the power of it is not just do you get those reviews to post on the website that actually help in the sales and conversion process, but they actually, across every client I talk to that's doing this, is leading to significant incremental revenue. In this case, 14% of the people that click on the review link actually make another purchase. And in this client example, it's the second highest conversion rate next to their abandoned cart program. And then like that earlier example I showed, this is a product review notification. So this is sort of after this previous email, somebody's actually posted their review, and this is coming back and again and sort of thanking them from that. Another touch point, in this case, giving them kind of an incentive and asking them to review more products they have. But again, very similar, 12% of the people that actually click on this to go back to the website and make another purchase. And you can see that they show the product they reviewed, et cetera. So opportunity for, again, enhancing the relationship and conversion. So I'm going to end with just a couple of, with an eye chart here with a couple of kind of keys to conversion. Again, think about, as I mentioned, just leveraging your existing investments in technologies, your web analytics solutions, your review engines, your recommendation engines, your e-commerce tool, and using that technology and content to power into your email. Secondly, when you think about timing of these, it can be very complex, but as an example, when you think about those review request emails, the timing may vary. So you may have to have some pretty sophisticated business rules in there. So a book, you may want to hit somebody, a month after they purchase a book for review, but somebody purchasing toner cartridge or something like that, you might be able to come back and touch them 2 weeks later or something like that. Design, again, we could do hours on just design, and Tim touched on kind of landing page stuff, but I think, a couple things here when we think about how people are interacting with email increasingly on mobile devices and things like that, that yes, you want to use the power of great design in email and creating those sort of content buckets and tables and using images and HTML to help with the conversion, but also make sure that those emails still work in kind of a mobile environment, in preview panes with image blocking on and things like that. Make sure you leverage good navigation that can get people back to the website easily. And obviously content is going to sort of be key to this. I'll touch on just one thing. Again, thinking beyond just kind of the concept of recommendations and things like that, but think about non-purchase behaviors such as where people have searched on your website, and that shows sort of intent and pulling that kind of content back in. And finally, as we always say in sort of marketing email, test, 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 so test everything. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to you, Lou.
Thanks for a great day. Bye-bye.